Good afternoon, judges. Thank you for your time today. Fellow competitors, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Les Adams, and I'm the CEO of LRES Solutions. LRES stands for Long-Term Renewable Energy Storage. It's my pleasure to introduce my colleagues today, Chief Operations Officer Wendy Zernike, and Chief Marketing and Finance Officer Erik Malan. And we're very excited to be here today to have the opportunity to talk to you about this solution and how it can make a difference for small, remote, off-grid and isolated communities in their transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. So what are we actually talking about here? What is the LRES solution? In a nutshell, in simple terms, the LRES solution can take energy generated from any renewable source and turn that into electricity by splitting hydrogen, by splitting water to form hydrogen, which is then stored long-term for when it's required. Now, when we say long-term, we really mean that. We're not talking a couple of hours here. We're talking days, weeks, months. Legitimate long-term storage to solve the intermittency problem for small, isolated communities. So today, we will walk you through and introduce you to one small site from Australia, which is indicative of all the others. We'll take you through how that community is dependent on fossil fuels and how our solution can replace that. We'll show you that it's cheaper than diesel. We'll talk about the capital cost and what's required to make this a reality. We'll touch on climate change and the jobs, how we can take this to the next stage from where it's progressed to. This solution not only has potential here in Queensland, but Australia-wide and around the world to make a difference to these communities. A little bit of a technical issue on the slide, that's what we were trying to sort out before. So, 33 million litres of diesel, that's a big number. That's filling up your little sedan for 550,000 tonnes. It's a lot of diesel. And the figures you can't read there say 67,200 tonnes of CO2. And this is just in one small community. And that's just the start. And that's over 20 years. There are many communities like this. So let me tell you about Doomadgee. Doomadgee is a really small town up in the far north of Queensland. Now the purpose of this slide is just to show you it's a long way from everything and everyone and everywhere. It's 1,800 kilometres from where you sit here today. Right. And it's hot and it's wet. If it's not hot and wet, then it's hot and dry. So it's always hot. Right? So they have some issues, but they're highly dependent on electricity for everything. Now, even though Australia has the largest electricity grid in the world, and we're a developed country, Doomadgee is not connected to it. There are many communities like this in Australia. It's simply not economically viable for the grid to extend to these remote communities for such a small population. So let's have a little bit more of a look at Doomadgee. It's a tiny, tiny community. It has a population of around 1,200 people, mainly Indigenous. There's 198 families, according to the AGS, and 155 households. And this is the town. Now, one of the things about Doomadgee is that they're totally reliant on electricity for everything. Everything must come in there by truck, including all the fuel to keep the lights on. Now, they have a different relationship with electricity than we do. When we flick a light, we don't know where the energy comes from. The people in Doomadgee do. And the reason for that is right about here, in the middle of town, there's a very big pumping generator that burns diesel 24/7. The people of Doomadgee can feel it, they can smell it, and they can walk by it on the way to school. They see it all the time. Whereas us, we don't know where our power comes from. So it's a different relationship. But their water, their sanitation, their refrigeration, their cooling, everything is centric to the community and its sustenance. So playing with our acronym a little bit here, we can limit the diesel or totally eliminate the diesel for this community. We can provide reliable electricity, and we can do it cheaper. And, of course, we can do it sustainably because we can mitigate 100% of the diesel. So, more slide issues. Let's take a moment to have a look at what this long-term storage actually means. We're talking about a solid-state hydrogen. Now, you're probably familiar with hydrogen, and you're thinking explosions and gas. That's not what this is. We're talking a solid-state hydrogen. The simplest way to describe it, it's like mayonnaise stored in special steel containers. Okay? So it's safe and it's stable. And it's stored at ambient temperature, low pressure, and it has a high energy density. In fact, 2.5 times over lithium-ion batteries. But of course, you've heard of Tesla and what they're doing in South Australia. They're doing some fantastic work on a large scale. But that technology is different to this. Each technology has its own characteristics and is good for some things and not for others. Lithium-ion discharges over time. The battery goes flat in your phone if you don't use it. This doesn't do that, and that's the key point. We're talking legitimate long-term storage. So, let me give you a bit more detail on the solution. I'll walk you through it, and we'll do it in 2 steps. So over here, the sun shines in Zernike a lot, because it's really hot. So we can take renewable inputs from any source that generates electricity. Solar, wind, geothermal, anything. That then goes normally across to some batteries, and these are standard batteries like lithium-ion, which are good for that reason, and then out to the community where they need power. Now, one of the key things you should be aware of is even the fundamental diagram you see up there, most communities do not have that much renewable input. So LRES has recognised this, and we've included the required renewables as part of our proposal in our scoping and size. So when there's extra power not being used, it can be diverted over here into the electrolyser, where water is split to form hydrogen, and that's stored in the red box in the middle. This is actually where the storage containers occur. Now, this is the key point. If you remember nothing else from this presentation, remember this. This solution can store energy for days, weeks, months, practically indefinitely, without any loss. And then it can be retrieved by the fuel cell and fed back to the batteries to meet the community's needs. Now, in this case, we've scoped it at 3 days. Now, that's not 3 days of just cloudy weather. That's 3 days of complete black, no sun. Now, I can't remember the last time that happened, can you? Right. So, the specifications are tailored to each site. But this is this example we're working with. So, the helicopter view again. There's the basic solution concept. Now, in real terms, what does this thing look like? Well, you've seen a solar panel before. All right? Don't even describe that. The solution will be built into standardised containers. And it will be built on a modular basis so it can be deployed to Zernike. And as I said before, it's a long way from everywhere. Right? So it's difficult to get there and put a solution in place. So it'll be built here in Brisbane, deployed, pre-prepared foundations to form the system to whatever the specification is. So for the town of Zernike, 33 million litres of diesel, 62,700 tonnes of CO2. That's what we can mitigate just in this one town.
So the initial capital cost for Griffith is about $33 million. Now that's a lot of money for a really tiny town with only 1,200 people. However, how does that compare to the cost of burning diesel for 20 years? Now, unfortunately, capital cost is not a good unit of measurement when we're dealing with electricity systems. The industry uses what's known as a levelized cost of energy. It takes all of the costings and all of the inputs and gives us an easy to measure levelized cost of energy, which is measured on cents per kilowatt or dollars per megawatt. And it puts everything on an even playing field so we can compare all the various technologies. Now, on an even playing field, the LRES system is cheaper. If we have a look at diesel, the capital costing is actually quite insignificant, but over the long term, it's the input, it's the fuel that drives up the price. Now, if we have a look at the LRES solution on the other side here, we are 54% cheaper over a 20-year lifespan. Now, what does this mean for the end consumers? Now, in Queensland, we use what's known as a uniform tariff, which means that someone here in Brisbane and someone in Doomadgee pay the same price. However, the cost of generation isn't the same. In Doomadgee, it is a lot more expensive, and the Queensland government covers that shortfall. Because the LRES solution is so much cheaper, we can save our clients and the Queensland government an approximate $28 million over the next 20 years. Now, what is that? That's a really big figure, so let's break that down a little bit. Now, that is $822 per person in Doomadgee per year, or $6,700 per home. When we look beyond Doomadgee itself, and we look at Queensland as a whole, the Queensland government subsidises electricity to the tune of $1 billion across Queensland every year. Now, an important thing to take away from this, however, is the end consumer is not the LRES client. That is not our target customer. Our target customer is the entity that generates the electricity at the remote site. And in Queensland, that is Ergon Energy. They have over 33 sites in Queensland that are completely remote and isolated, and that includes Torres Strait Islands. Now, although we have a fantastic financial incentive for them, this isn't the only benefit that we offer. We have great benefits in terms of sustainability and in terms of climate reduction as well.
So let's talk about climate change and what that means for Ergon Energy and what it means for the little town of Doomadgee. The Queensland government has collected data and presented it on their website telling us what's going to happen in Queensland over the next 20 years if we don't do anything to mitigate climate change. And specifically, if we look up in Doomadgee, in the Gulf region, 3 things are going to happen. They're going to get increased rainfall. It's already wet up there. As Les said, it's dry and hot, and it's wet and hot. So they are isolated up to 6 months of the year in the wet season. Higher temperatures. We're experiencing a lovely 24 degrees here in Brisbane today. It's 39 degrees up in Doomadgee, and that's just the average. And it's only going to get hotter. And lastly, an increase in evaporation. And of course, that means that there's going to be more droughts, more loss of water storage. And that's a really important fact to the town of Doomadgee. We've talked about climate action, and we know that the UN thinks this is an important goal. They've developed 17 sustainability development goals. But are they just items? Are they just little icons up here? What do they actually mean? They mean a lot to the town of Doomadgee. They mean a lot to developing countries. And we are the lucky country here, and yet we have communities that have similar conditions to developing nations. Let's talk about clean water and sanitation. They need electricity in Doomadgee to make this happen. Good health and well-being, they need electricity. And sustain cities and communities. Diesel for the next 20 years is not sustainable for Doomadgee. So what the United Nations is telling us, and in particular, telling Ergon Energy that they need to supply Doomadgee with accessible, affordable, reliable, and sustainable electricity. So goal number 7 here is actually the one that underpins all the other goals to make the Sustainability Development Goals real and for us to achieve them by 2030. So what does this mean globally and our target market? Well, there's 1.2 billion people that have no access to electricity. Today they have no access to electricity. So sorry for the typo, but don't let that detract from our message here, the global potential that our solution has. So why is LRES the right company to take this product to market? It's our key partnerships and relationships. We have an energy economist who put the figures together on the levelised cost of energy. Will be costing this project for us. We have the physicist who has actually designed the metal-hydride that's specific for the solution that's sitting here today working at Griffith University. And we have An energy specialist who specialises in fuel cells is one of the essential components to put this system together. And let's not forget our relationships with our suppliers. One of the key suppliers we have here is with Japanese Steelworks. They are the makers of the metal-hydride that's specific for our system. We also have a financing relationship with Tangent Finance to help us get to the next level. So what's our strategy? We met with the Director General, Paul Simshauser, for the Department of Energy and Water Supply. His strategy is two things to reduce the cost of these high capital cost renewable energy systems. You either need to reduce the amount of money that you borrow or reduce the cost of the money you actually borrow. A little bit of a problem on the slide here, but basically on the left we feel that we're well placed to get grants and philanthropic donations. We're strongly positive with our solution here that will interest those kind of investments. But on the right-hand side, we're aware that there's the Northern Australia Infrastructure Facility that is funded by the federal government to put infrastructure up in Northern Australia. So great location for Dulwich. There's also the Clean Energy Finance Corporation as well, which the Turnbull government's been focusing on for investments in clean energy systems. And of course we've got responsible lenders as well. So you all know the conventional finance model, a supply-based model where we get a loan from the bank, we supply our product and we deliver it to the customer and the customer pays us back. It's pretty unrealistic to think that as we're a startup company. So what we're looking at is a more creative finance model where the lender is the central person to the relationship here, and LRES is the one that puts the customer, in this case Ergon Energy, in contact with the lender. It's their good credit rating that makes this a good investment. There are three winners in this. Ergon actually gets a low loan for their solution, a sustainable solution. The lender gets a great new client that's long-term and stable, and LRES gets the opportunity to take this to the next step.
There's risks in every project. One of those for us is this is a hostile, wet, hot, dry environment. The technology must be robust. In our plan, we've done some risk mitigation, and we've addressed and thought about many of these things. Now, there's no point doing all this if the technology is not ready to go to market. This is from the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, and you can see that the LRES position is well down the track and heading towards maturity. And let's talk about the next step. We're talking about today a feasibility study for 12 months with two primary goals: to fully design the engineering of the system based on Dulwich and with a scope ready to deploy if that is successful. And that modular design that's fully engineered will be ready to deployment in subsequent sites, with a 15% profit for LRES and co-investors from the first site onwards. Now, we're looking today for a proposal for $460,000 to proceed with that feasibility study from the co-investment offer. Now, this is a project schedule. We've all seen thousands of these before. But the key point here is that we have a technical engineering group, including community representatives, who will guide this to be a success and be fit for purpose. It's one of our governance measures and controls that the outcome will be as we expect. So in conclusion, we've talked today about one small community in Australia that is totally dependent on diesel for its electricity, and how centric that is to that community, with the diesel generator in the middle of the town. That community cannot exist without a reliable, affordable and secure supply of electricity for everything it needs. We've shown you how we're cheaper than diesel, significantly cheaper than diesel, and other competitors. Our solution can provide reliable, secure and affordable electricity and reduce emissions by fully mitigated diesel. So this solution has potential not just in Queensland, but around Australia and in other countries developed and developing around the world. And it all starts today with Dulwich and your decision.